Hit Mix 88.9 WEIU. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens. My guest today is Kristen Holly, Assistant Superintendent at Charleston. Are you there, Kristen?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right.
Our first successful. We are Zooming this one today on Year 13 and WEIU, so we appreciate that so much. So I appreciate you putting up with all of our technical stuff today, Kristen. You are our test subject today.
I love it. Well, I appreciate being the test subject. Hopefully it works out all right.
It's working out good. And ironically, you've had to deal with some of this stuff this entire semester at Charleston High School. So it's old news for you, I guess. But did you ever think that you were going to have a school year like this, how this spring semester?
Never in a million years would we have ever predicted that we would have been trying to do school from home. No way.
Let's just talk about where we're at right now. Here we're taping this and going live a little bit on May 18th. So just where's Charleston School District at in terms of the school year and what's left to do?
Well, our last day for seniors was last week. We actually had virtual graduation this past Friday night. I don't know if you knew about that.
Yep.
The rest of our students finish up on Friday. That's their last day of technically of remote learning. And then we have 2 days the following week for our teachers to do what is called remote learning planning days. That will be an opportunity for them to wrap up their remote learning and begin doing some, planning and grading and finishing up all of the gathering of data.
You had to work on the fly so much to get this thing going in the middle of a semester. Talk about the reaction and what all we didn't see from the public that Charleston School District did to make this happen as smoothly as possible.
Well, on the fly is for sure an understatement. We just kept using the word uncharted territory. I think, we had very little time to prepare. As anybody in our country did. We didn't necessarily see this coming to this degree. So I would say, and I speak really genuinely when I would say, our community responded incredibly well under the circumstances. This all happened to us during spring break, as you know. So it was kind of an interesting timing for us. We didn't have access to everyone. We had, teachers that were either on spring break or not available. We had students that weren't available. So we did have some time for a few days over spring break, at least administrators, to kind of gather our thoughts and begin communicating the plan. When we got back from spring break, we really hit the ground running. We gave the teachers had a little bit of time, but not much time to basically try to figure out how they were going to conduct teaching from home. They responded incredibly well. I cannot say enough about the teachers' response. It's been very stressful and very overwhelming, but they have maintained positivity. They've gone above and beyond, contacting students and parents. They're doing Zoom calls. They're delivering packets to homes. It's been really remarkable to see everybody rise to the occasion the way they did.
Was there any pre-plan at all, or was just all on the fly when it hit over spring break?
It was all on the fly. We did, I will say that once we got some guidance from the state as far as recommendations for remote learning, we had to develop a remote learning plan involving the staff. And so once we had some guidelines and from the state, we got together with our support staff and our teachers unions, and we put together a plan. And then from that, we were able to communicate that and really at least fine tune things just a little bit. Nothing was perfect. And in hindsight, there were many things, if we had seen it coming, we would have preferred to have had in place, but we didn't. So we did the best we could.
Do you think the state and local districts will put together a pre-plan, or is this kind of a working pre-plan that's went into effect immediately?
The plan went into effect immediately. We developed that plan, and when we developed it, we put it together in a very general way, knowing that remote learning may be something we'd have to consider in the future. Even, for example, if we had a snowstorm and we were going to be out of school for 3 days or 4 days at a time, then we have a plan that would transition to a smaller.
Now, the kids aren't going to like that. You know that.
I know. But it does mean that we could count them in attendance.
That's true.
Many school districts in Illinois are already doing e-learning plans for emergency days. That's something that's been going on across the state for the past year anyway. So we were looking to begin having that conversation. We had to do it a little quicker than we thought.
I want to talk about the people that this affected and kind of go down 1 through 4 of the different groups. What would you say to the Charleston High School class of 2020, the ones who had to go through this and not really get what we would call what we got as a graduation?
Yeah, I think that's the group that we have all had just the most empathy for, and just that they missed out on not just the academic component, but the social component. You know, when you're finishing your K-12 education and you're walking through your hallways of Charleston High School, saying goodbye to your friends and your teachers, and spending those last couple of months doing what the students will remember, prom and the graduation ceremony, that's heartbreaking for all of us that they had to miss that. So what I would say to them is, generation of students has certainly shown us that they are strong and tough, and they've made the best of it. Their attitudes have been amazing. I've talked to several of the students over the past few months, and they've maintained a positive attitude, and I think they've made the best of it, and I'm really proud of them. I'm just really sorry for them that this happened, but we're proud of them.
Now, to all the other students who will be back in Charleston in the fall, we hope, what do you say to those students?
I would say, particularly for those students coming back in the fall, we need to be prepared for school to look different in the fall. And I wish I could tell you. I've had many people over the past couple of weeks ask me what's that going to look like, and I don't know. But I do think we need to prepare our students for school to look different for a little while. And so I would say to them that they need to hang in there and know that we miss them very much, and we'd rather be with them than see them at home. But we're going to try and create an environment of remote learning if we need it. That will maybe be a little bit easier for them to access, and hopefully having this experience, they'll be more successful with it in the fall.
The other people that obviously did everything on the fly was the teachers in all the school districts, but today we're talking with Kristen of the Charleston School District. What do you say to the teachers who had to basically relearn how to teach in the middle of a semester? What do you say to them?
I cannot tell you how incredibly proud, and I sound like their mother, and I tell them this sometimes. I'm a motherly person, but this was so very difficult. I don't think that people truly can understand how difficult this was for the teachers, not just the technology aspect and the instructional aspect, but also just the social and emotional part. You know, they have personal connections with students, and we count on seeing them and interacting with them and checking on them, and we worry about them, and this has been really hard on our teachers. So I think that my message to all of them is certainly it made us incredibly proud. They have gone, I say over and over, above and beyond, try to reach students. If you only knew, I could talk for hours about all the things that teachers have done to try to reach students and make the best out of this situation.
Can you give us maybe one example of a teacher? You don't have to mention names, but maybe they just did something to just make their class easier or help a student, or...
I can give you a few quick examples.
Okay, that'd be great.
Certainly Zoom, what you're seeing now, we have teachers that meet with students on Zoom on a regular basis, or some capacity like Teams. And I will tell you that they're telling me that if anything, at the very minimum, the students just light up to see their friends on the screen and see the teacher. I know for sure we have teachers that had difficulty reaching families at the beginning on the phone or through email. So they went to their homes, safely, of course, but they met students through the window. They dropped out materials in mailboxes. I know a teacher that went to each student's class, each student in her class's home, and dropped off care packages, gifts. We have seen teachers make social media pages for students to post pictures of what they're doing. It's been really remarkable, and teachers have been incredibly cretive.
Wow. Now, the other fourth group is obviously those parents who had to, work, not work,
Yes.
go, make sure your kid's doing the thing they need to do while they're at work. Talk about to the parents of the Charleston School District.
That has been, I can't put my head around what some of these parents are going through, particularly with the younger children, if they're trying to work at home, or if they're unemployed, having financial difficulties, and then adding the burden of monitoring your child's school activities, helping them get online. That is, I am sure, a major, major challenge for parents. And we just thank all the parents very much for all the efforts that they've put in, and for communicating so well with teachers, and for helping their children at home. It's certainly not optimal, but we really do appreciate everything everybody's done.
I know you kind of answered this, but I want to talk a little bit about that as we move forward to looking towards the fall of 2020. I know you don't speak for the entire school district, and there's a lot of factors that are into play in this, but what do you think is kind of a timeline for when we might know what school will be or won't be in the fall here in Charleston?
I wish I knew the answer to that. That is a great question. What we know here, all that we can control is just being ready for any possible scenario. I would hope that we get enough time to prepare, but really at this point we have all summer. And if they come out with information a couple weeks before school starts, then we're going to have to be ready for whatever information comes out. So I think at this point, the school district's perspective is to begin planning for multiple scenarios and being prepared.
That's good. Yeah, and I know you hear so many rumors about, split up classes, smaller classes, or morning only, and then clean the school, then have fall. I guess everything's on the table, is safe to say right now?
Those are all on the table. We also realize that we may have a period of time where the state might shut down schools again. If we get an outbreak in October, with the fall and the influx of more illness, then those are all things we need to be prepared for. We hope not, but I don't think we can be caught off guard this time.
I know I have to ask this because people have been asking me, do you think students will be required to wear masks if they do have in-school learning in the fall?
I think that's a possibility, yes. Some things that we're seeing, again, I don't know, and I certainly don't speak for the state, but I would not be surprised if our students are expected to wear masks or our staff are expected to wear masks. I also wouldn't be surprised to be prepared for social distancing elements to the school, which we're trying to get our heads around how we do that with the younger students. But those are things I don't think we should be surprised to see.
Yeah, but you're prepared, and it won't be easy, but it'll be easier maybe in the fall since we've had this trial run here in spring of 20.
And we're preparing, for example, just getting masks available, starting to think about things like thermometers, ordering more thermometers. Those are things we can do now to be prepared for whatever the state requires us to do. I
know kids are resilient and they bounce back from a lot of stuff, but are you a little concerned about any long-term effects maybe on the younger kids of what they're seeing as they're growing up here in Charleston?
I think there are valid concerns. I think anytime something like this happens, it's considered trauma. It could be considered grief, some people would say, depending on how the student's handling it. Also, we worry about students and what their environments may be like at home. When they're at school, we can keep an eye on things. They can tell us what's going on at home. We have lost connection with many of our students, and that we have put in some systems in place to help monitor that, but it's difficult, and we do worry about long-term effects. And we are going to be doing some training with the staff either in the summer or in the fall on responding to trauma.
The community, it seems like in all these communities around here, we're talking with Kristen Holly of Charleston today, but the community support for just not the graduates, but for the school systems has been incredible. Your thoughts on what Charleston has done to help Charleston High School and all the schools in Charleston?
Honestly, I'm not saying I'm biased, of course, because I'm here, but I do believe that we have done our very best to honor our students at all levels, but particularly our high school students. We have tried to honor them in the best ways that we can without going against governor's orders. It's been a very tricky balance. You want to provide students with opportunities, but you also need to remember to be careful to do that. So I think we've done the best we can to help honor our students. We've had signs put in yards. We've had, when they came to pick up their diplomas, I know when the students came to pick up diplomas, they were received by staff and made to feel as special as they could be without all the close contact.
Everything is ever not perfect when something like this happens, and mostly in mid-semester. That's just the craziest things. How have you dealt with any criticism that people have said, "Oh, you didn't do this right"? I mean, how do you deal with it from your point of view?
No one's perfect, and again, because we were caught off guard by this, there were some things that you can't see coming, and hindsight's always 20/20. I think anytime in any situation, regardless of the pandemic or whatever the situation is, if there's something that happens, you own up to it, you reflect on why that happened, and you improve it for the future, or you make corrections in it. I do think that we did everything as well as we could have. Very early on, there were some things that happened that we couldn't have seen coming, and that we just look back on and use them to learn from.
And every week something else changes. I mean, we were given a new set of rules or guidelines. I mean,
That's right. Yep. Everything, especially in the beginning, things just seem to be changing so quickly. Those first 2 weeks, we were getting emails from the state superintendent at 9:00 at night with new guidelines, and it was just an ever-changing situation, especially in the very beginning.
I teach one class every spring here at Eastern, so I'm somewhat of a teacher, but not like full-time like you in the Charleston is. My biggest concern were the kids getting the most out of it by online learning. Do you think they get the same, or is it less? I mean, what do you think?
I think that just like in school learning, I think every student's very different. I think we did have some students that did very well with remote learning. I think there were some students that saw this as an opportunity to get ahead, to work independently and set some goals and learn a lot. There were also some students that were just disengaged, and we were unable to get as much participation out of as we would have liked. And I think we've got everything in between. So I don't think it's ideal for a lot of students. Again, some just like online learning for adults. Some people prefer online learning. They can do it at their own pace. And if a student had to care for younger siblings at home, then maybe remote learning worked out well because they could work in the evenings. But I don't think it's ideal for most students developmentally. That contact time with the teacher is so critical.
If you could ask or tell our elected officials in Springfield one thing that you've learned about this distance learning, what do you think they should know or need to know up there?
I do think that, from our perspective, we want to keep everybody safe. Absolutely. That's our number one concern, is people's health.
Okay. And I think
decisions that were made, no looking back on those. But moving forward, I do think as much guidance as we can get from the state, the earlier the better, is what I would request. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to try to assume I know what's best to do in a pandemic situation, but I would appreciate any decisions and guidance as early as possible so that we're prepared.
And I know they are scheduled to meet in Springfield this week, at least to try to get some things doing. They have a lot of stuff going on, including the Illinois budget, but obviously this is also on that agenda, so hopefully you are correct and we get some answers earlier than later. But we do live in Illinois.
We do. That is right. I just think it's important. The most information we can get as early as possible will help us to be the most prepared.
Other concerns as we go forward with distance learning and/or COVID stuff, other things that we haven't talked about.
Well, I think it's important for people to know that there's a grant the state has provided. It's called the CARES Act. And I don't know if you've heard about that,
yes.
But they're providing school districts in Illinois with funds. And those funds are specifically to be used for preparation for remote learning, COVID-related school closure type purchases. So right now we're busy thinking about what we would use those funds for, and we're preparing to write that grant. And I think one of the important things for us in Charleston would be looking at things like devices for students.
I was going to ask that, yeah.
Internet access at home. We were able to provide devices for students who didn't have them this year. A couple weeks in, we started getting information about who didn't have them, and we were able to provide them. But moving forward, we'd like to ensure that students have their own device and that they have access to Wi-Fi at home, and that we have a learning platform that's consistent for students and parents and teachers to use across K through 12. That's another wish that we had prior to going into this, is just a consistent platform.
Now, for the teachers who usually have the luxury of being off in the summer doing what they want, are they going to have that luxury, or are they going to have to kind of be prepared maybe to go back in and rearrange how they do things in terms of classroom and studying? How will that affect them?
There will be some need for professional development over the summer. We will.
You said it a lot better than I did.
We will pay the teachers at some point once we decide on some learning platforms and how we're going to use devices in the future. There will be the need, but we're going to give people some time off before we do that. It's going to be what we'd be looking at probably July. People need some time to separate a little bit. It's been overwhelming. So, but there will be professional development for whatever new platform we receive. We'll also have to provide some training for our parents and students if they receive devices. We're going to have to figure out a creative way to either bring them in or do Zoom trainings with students and parents if they're getting devices.
You're reading my mind. I wanted to ask you, as for next year, if there's going to be, obviously school's going to be a little different no matter what. Are you going to provide like a tip sheet or some tips for parents so they can kind of better be prepared, or things that we learn over the summer that will help their students for the fall?
Yes, right now we would ideally like to do those not in person, but with careful social distancing and thinking about how we might be able to offer some in-person conversation as opposed to in print. If we're going to give a student a device and have parents be expected to do some of this at home, we would like to provide people with a lot more guidance than we were able to do this time.
From reading online, they need math help, I think is what most of them have said.
Math is difficult, especially the older the students get. I know I can't help my high school student with her math anymore.
I'm right there with you. Right there. We're talking to Kristen Holly from the Charleston School District today. Student routines is one of the things, as I did some research this morning, that a lot of educators are worried about. If we continue this into the fall, how do you teach a student who doesn't have to, quote unquote, get up and be somewhere on time to get into a routine so they're doing the proper way to learn?
I think that, all we can do is offer advice to families if we weren't in school, similar to what we did this year. We had teachers send schedules home and offer advice. It's difficult because every child is different. Some children may, especially high school students, they may benefit from waking up a little later and working into the evening, just depending on the students' routines. But I always recommend, in fact, it's been what I think has made students the most successful, the ones that have had a routine where I get up at a certain time. It doesn't have to be 7 a.m., but get up at a certain time and have a time of day that is dedicated to just my schoolwork, and then have breaks in my day and just finding a routine. I think we'll need to offer students some guidance on that moving forward.
On the CARES Act, to go back to that for a minute, do you think it will provide enough resources so you don't have to worry about not having everything you need? Have you got any feedback from that yet?
Well, what we're going to have to do is prioritize the use of those funds. And again, I think the intention of those funds is specifically for COVID-related remote learning needs. So our priorities, again, would be the devices and Wi-Fi. We are going to need to look at, again, putting money in there for teachers to do professional development. But we also need to consider, as I mentioned earlier, masks and thermometers. Besides just the learning needs, we are going to have some needs to make schools safer, that we're going to have to work on that through our funds as well.
Are you working with and talking to other school districts in the area to maybe steal good ideas or share good ideas between them?
Absolutely. Collaboration's the best way to work. We have schools right around us that we talk to. We have a great relationship with our both of the other school districts in our county. And I know a district office, at least, we talk with them frequently about what they're thinking. We actually had one of our assistant superintendents had a meeting with some people in the other districts just this week just to brainstorm CARES Act ideas. So yes, we are hoping to work with them a lot.
We have a few minutes left today with Kristen Holly. Anything that I forgot to ask you that you think is important that the people of Charleston know about what this Charleston School District and the Charleston High School is doing right now here in town for the kids, the parents, everybody?
I just hope that, again, I can't thank people enough, the teachers and parents and students, for everything they did to work through a difficult time. Things are not going to be easy moving forward. So I guess my message is to be patient. And we have been collecting input. I have a survey that I sent out to the staff and parents and students. We're collecting input on how things went and what we could do differently. We're going to use the next few months to try to be ready. So we would appreciate any input. And again, we're just grateful for everybody's support.
One of the other things I heard, the possibility of doing a combination of in school and at home studying. Do you think that would work? I mean, maybe kids, instead of going 5 days, are only going 5 mornings or something. Would that work?
Yeah, I think that's a definite possibility, and I do think it could work. I do think if you think about high school students in particular, some of them that are getting ready to go off to college are going to need to manage a different type of schedule and managing more independence and time in between classes. So I think it's manageable. I think what it could look like, particularly for our older students, is some in-class teaching followed by the online aspect being more the assignments and the independent practice piece being done at home. So that's some things that we'll need to prepare our teachers for, and thinking about how you structure your instruction a little bit differently.
Okay. A couple minutes left with Kristen Holly. Let's talk about other things, maybe not related to COVID, and just have some fun as we wrap this up. I do appreciate you doing this via Zoom, and I think it seems to be working well. I think you've only froze up once on our end, so it's good. Let's talk about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got to be the assistant superintendent here in Charleston.
Sure. Well, I am not originally from Charleston. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Home of the Steelers. All right.
Yeah, the Steelers.
I'm a giant Steeler fan.
Big Steeler fan.
That's awesome.
Then I moved to Providence, Rhode Island, where I started my teaching career as an elementary teacher and got involved with some literacy coaching out there. And then my husband teaches at Eastern, so that's what brought us here to Charleston. And we've been here for 16 years. I started out as a literacy coach here, and I worked in the media center, and I've been in various administrative roles before I was assistant superintendent.
Personal advice from Kristen Holly to the young people of the Charleston area.
To young people of the Charleston area. That I just, one thing that I will say, I've been in different places and in much larger cities. Charleston is a really special community to me personally, and I think it's because this community just embraces love and support for one another. And so I would encourage our young people that are growing up here to continue to show support for one another and be there for one another. And when times get tough, like now, that people rally and help each other. It's what makes this community special.
First thing you'll do when the pandemic is over, are you going to go anywhere or eat somewhere or get out of town or what?
Getting out of town sounds great. Safely. I think it's going to be a transition, don't you? I think the idea of being in large groups and going back to normal is a little bit stressful and not something that I would necessarily look forward to, but I would love to be able to. I was supposed to have a spring break trip, and that got changed abruptly. So I think a little trip somewhere just to relax and take a break from some of this would be a welcome thing to look forward to.
Who was your, do you have a mentor you look up to, or a high school teacher or a college professor that was kind of the person that got you started?
I actually have a principal that was a mentor to me when I was in my first few years of teaching. And she was my mentor for sure, and she's probably the reason why I'm in administration now. She was very supportive and was just a strong educator. So I would say she's the one that comes to mind right away.
That's awesome. I thank you so much for being here today. Kristen Holly, Assistant Superintendent at Charleston Community School District Number 1. It was great to have you on and get to know what's going on in Charleston. And you guys have done a heck of a job, and you're to be commended.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Nice to see you.
You too. We'll see you guys.
Well.
Yep, you too. This is WEIU.